So this is diversity, CHCDIV001, and it's our third unit. What am I trying to do? Get it up here. Yeah, and yeah, so housekeeping, I think we're all good. We all know the rules and stuff. Don't smoke anywhere near the building. And that's about the only rule my boss freaks out about. The rest are all good. So yeah, on diversity, in our unit, our first chapter, it talks about identifying, reflecting on our own social, cultural perspectives and biases. So for the first few minutes, I'm going to be talking about myself. I talk about myself a lot. I never used to talk as much as what I do now, but some nights my throat is sore and I'm like, oh, I got COVID. No, I've just been talking a lot. So I was born in Namibia, which is in Southwest Africa. I have colored it in there. It's just above South Africa. And it's quite a large country. It looks little, but if you look at Australia, it's probably about the same size as Queensland. Yeah, so it's a bit bigger. So if you look, South Africa is probably, South Central Africa from the equator down is probably the same size as Australia. And so that's about a little bit less than a quarter of Australia. So it's quite a big country in land mass, but we've only got a population of probably about 2 million now. We used to be 1.5 million. It's mostly a desert. The country is mostly desert, and it's on the Atlantic Ocean, so it's called Benguela Stream that goes past there, and it's on a it's also on top of a equator, what you call it, like a tectonic plate, and so we have what you might have heard about the Skeleton Coast. So we have quite a lot of hello, Tammy.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Do you want me in?
Yes, if you want to. Yeah. So you still got a few to go. Hey, just grab those. Have you done diversity?
Yes,
So I'm doing diversity again today.
I think I've done that one.
Yeah, if you've done that one.
Do you want me to? I'll go another way around.
Yeah, just check.
I've still got that last one that we done that I haven't finished yet. Do you want me to go in there and do that?
Yeah.
And there's 2 jobs that I need to apply for today.
Okay. All right. We'll chat after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No worries.
So, yeah, I'll go do that then. Hey?
Yeah. If you've done that one, just leave the unit. Yeah.
I'll have a look.
You can have a look. Okay. Yeah, so that makes our coast very rugged and very rough, and we have yeah, and then because of the cold stream there, we don't have much rain. We have 50 mils a year. So, but there's parts of Namibia that stretch into the Central Africa that are a little bit more, like we said, a little bit more, you know, high rainfall and a little bit greener and stuff. So it borders over into Botswana on this side, where there's big plains where there's a lot of elephant, a lot of animals and stuff.
Yes, I'll do it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a little bit about Namibia. And just so you know, where I'm from, Namibia is very multicultural as well, like Australia. We have about 76 different languages we speak about in our country, of which probably about 30 of them are African languages. The rest are European languages like Dutch and German and English and, you know, Spanish and Portuguese. And we have a big Portuguese community. Because the Portuguese were the first ones to settle in Africa. They went, Vasco da Gama went down the coast there and they settled there. Namibia is a German colony, so we have lots of Germans in Namibia. It's actually, we used to be a German colony, it's not German anymore. It's independent now. But yeah, so we were on the wrong side of the Second World War. I'm not German, but I've got some German relatives. But most of the Namibian Germans are Jewish Germans, so they dark. They've got dark hair with brown eyes. They look very Jewish, big noses and stuff. And yeah, and that tells you a German and a Jew together. It's interesting, to say the least. Very shrewd, very prosperous, actually, you know, the community itself. Very beautiful country in the sense of all our buildings and things are German buildings, and all the streets are very straight, and the trees are all planted exactly far from each other. But we've been independent since 1991. You know, we had an election, and majority of the people, which is Bambo people, they are ruling the country at the moment. Unfortunately, they're not as prosperous as the Germans. So some of the prosperity are slowly eroding. But other than that, it's probably one of the most stable countries in Africa, you know, much more stable than South Africa in any ways. And because we're a desert, we're lucky that not a lot of the North African people that are struggling, that coming from war-torn countries, are coming to try to live in Namibia like they do in South Africa, you know, trying to come and make a living, because there's nothing. It's just sand. So there's not much they can do, you know, it's not like this, you know, they can farm or get, you know, do anything much in Namibia. So my dad was a colored man. My great-grandmother was African, and my dad worked on the railways. We used to call him that he was a conductor. He worked in the back carriage, and we used to say that he's on the monk. He's a monkey because he's in the last carriage, because they hang out at the train like that. When they jump on the train, when the train's going through the countryside, the monkeys jump on and then they hang on the side of the train. So that's what the conductors do. They hang on the side of the train to put those, what do you call this, over when they have to change. Yeah. So, yeah, so he was on the railways, you know, all my, you know, growing up years. He's passed away now, but yeah, so I've got, coming from a very, very diverse culture, very diverse background. It's yeah, I think I've got my MA degree in diversity, just understanding social class. We've got such a huge gap between social status in Africa, as you all know. And probably have heard that, you know, the gap between the rich and poor are really stretching now. There's no middle class really, and unfortunately we were on the poor side, on the other side of the railway line. We were not on the rich side. I don't get along with most South Africans because I shouldn't be in Australia. It's normally just the rich people that get here. So I don't really fit into their social circles because I don't, you know, identify with a lot of these statuses. Saying that, my mum's side, they, you know, typical South Africans, not South Central Africans, they very status aware and, you know, very snobbish, really, my mum's family. So there's that economical diversity. We have racial diversity, obviously being, you know, a colored person. Then religion is a big thing anyways, and Africa specifically, because we have a lot of Muslims moving down from North Africa. The Muslim communities are growing. There's mosques in every town, every 100 meters. These days they're building mosques. And then obviously all the African religions and Christianity that, you know, have gone around. It's actually quite a big part of the African living is religion. Religion is a really deep-rooted thing in most of the African communities. And then different languages. I speak 3 languages and understand about 5. I can understand some Portuguese and Spanish. in Italian, just some words. Always try to learn how to say hello, at least in the language, especially if you work. You'll find in Mackay we have Italians, we have some Germans, we've got the Maltese. So there's quite a lot of our older people are actually quite diverse. A lot of them still have their accents are quite thick, which is really interesting. The younger people learn to speak more Australian, and then the older people just hold on to their accents. And then in families, we have that diversity. So that's from my background. I'm going to pause here a second, and I'm going to ask you if you feel comfortable to share a little bit of your background. No? Anyone wants to?
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you want to do it on camera?
I don't mind.
Yeah. Nobody worries about the camera? Can I turn it around? Let me just turn it around. Which one is? Okay, you go. Scott, got you?
My background, my name is Scott Andrew Mackenzie. Scottish background. My father was born over in Scotland and come over on the boat when he was 1. And my mother is English. Don't know much about my family history. When I was about 12 or so, a police officer came to the house and said to my father, "I've got some horrible news for you, Colin. Your father's dead." And my dad said, "Oh, that's awful. Who is he?" Not knowing, because my father never knew his dad. He took off when he was about 8. And my father grew up in the boys' home.
Oh.
Well, don't say, it is a very toughened background in that sort of regard. But having said that, it's one that he's experienced with positives, I believe. A lot of cruelty. There was a lot of growing up in, as we're talking about religion, a lot of the Catholic Church ran a lot of the boys' homes, which consisted of a lot of brutality. And my father was the only person from the boys' home to finish high school, and he moved on to do his matric at Melbourne Uni when we had free education. So he's a very lucky circumstance.
Yeah.
And my mother's a very caring person. She's a nurse, came over and did her degree. She was an insight, did her residency down at the Austin Hospital down in Melbourne, I believe. And, yeah, so that's sort of the background. I grew up down in Melbourne, which is very multicultural.
Yeah.
Having said that, it really does depend on how you treat people too, because it is very segregation. And what I mean by that is you'll have Little Italy was raised here. And when I was a kid growing up in Melbourne, there were more Greeks living in Melbourne than there was Athens.
Wow.
So the Greek community is a big part of Melbourne. And the diversity, when I was a young lad, when I started my apprenticeship, my boss only pretty much spoke Greek. And a lot of our building sites that we turned up to, because they are Greeks and Italians are exceptionally hard workers. They came to Australia, took up jobs in concreting and bricklaying, and they are exceptional workers. So it was a very tough environment, but a very wonderful one to experience, because they're all about family. If you ever go to if you ever have anything to do with Greeks, everything is about family, food, and caring for one another. So those sort of diversities, I think, are absolutely brilliant in Australian culture.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, because you get to view all sorts of different facets of every different part of society,
and you learn to accept people more. The more diverse you are, I think you.
As I sort of mentioned before, it really can be depending, because Melbourne is a horrible place for racism. It really is, and it's something that has changed over the years quite dramatically. But social acceptance in Melbourne's not an easy thing to come by. It's very orientated in their areas.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Stephanie, a little bit.
Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm an Indigenous Australian. I was born and bred around in Mackay. We all around in Mackay, grew up in around the cane fields, My father was actually working on the council, and then we moved into Serena, which is another cane town. Went to school in both the primary and high schools in Serena. Did work. Then I worked within childcare. Then I went from childcare. I went to police liaison in Mackay, in the big city, as we call it. And then I came through and I did about 12 years there. Worked in a lot around with PCYC. And there, so I became life members of PCYC and Blue Light. So we used to have as dancers. Yeah, PCYC, yeah. And then from then on, I went to Australia Post. Worked in Australia Post for nearly 9 years. So I learned all about different areas for where we did mailing and stuff like that. I got to unload the big red and blue trucks that use double Bs that go past. Helped to undo those. Did a lot of deliveries and stuff in and around Mackay area, so I know most of the streets. So yeah. Also, I'm in with I get in and around because my mother is South Island lady. Her family grew up in and around here. Her father was blackbirded in the 1800s that he came over here to Australia, and then he met my grandmother on my mother's side, I should say that, and they then bought a place at the sunny side around towards Homebush area, and that there. Then they had 12 kids. Yeah, 12 kids. I mean, back then, in those days, they was all family, so they had you started at one, and then you went on and on and on. And then they worked in the cane fields. My grandfather worked in the cane fields, and that they used to walk every day to go into town, or well, mostly they walked, or if not, I used to do a horse and sulky, and they used to go. So yeah, most of all the South Island people around here are very church related, mostly 7-day Adventists, that some of them are. Then some of them branched off and went into Catholic and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, there's still a big lot of us, but we've also too had racial stuff and that happens through to with life. I mean, it's still here, but a lot of people wouldn't pick up on it. But I look at it as to say that if they looked at it, most of the team, football or any sort of sport, it's made up nearly of all black people. And that's but other than that, yeah, I'm just happy to be who I am.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And Scott, do you mind sharing a little bit of your Dutch background, or from your family?
Nick.
So, Nick.
Oh, we came over here when I think it was, I can't remember. I think it was like 1960. We migrated here. My mum and dad migrated from Holland. So it was mum and dad and 4 children. Sorry. So we migrated down into Melbourne. So we came to Sydney, then moved to Melbourne, and we lived in Geelong. And I was raised in Geelong. Couldn't speak English when I started school, so school was just atrocious. I hated school, every minute of school, right through until the day that I left school at the age of 15. So I left school at the age of 15 and started work the next day, and worked ever since. So never been unemployed.
Wow.
Yeah, found and just always had good work ethic. So never been late for anything. Never. I think I had 2 half sick days in my whole work career. And similar situation, worked for an Italian builder at the start. So the day I left school, I started as a British labourer. Lasted 1 week. Absolutely hated it. Hated the boss because of his cultural difference. He was just He was just a bastard. He was just a hard bastard. He made you work. And so my first paycheck for a whole, I worked 5 days plus Saturday till 2 o'clock. I got $18. That was my first paycheck. $18 at the age of 15. And so the next week I started in an auto wrecking dismantling yard and went from $18 to $34 a week. To me, that was a lot of money. And I stayed there for 4 years, and then I joined the army, done some service for the army, and yeah, then pretty much when I got out of the army, done a couple of other small jobs, but then started working for myself and was self-employed for 35 years. So,
Oh,
yeah.
amazing.
I sort of really admired my mum and dad for the steps they took to
Come here, yeah.
come here, because they left all their family behind. They
And
knew
that was in the Great Depression, wasn't it?
They knew nobody
was,
when they came here, and they were sponsored here to come. They were sponsored to come here by the church, by the Reformed Church of Australia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or the Dutch Reformed
Dutch
Church.
Reformed,
Yeah,
okay.
Dutch
Yeah,
Reformed
I'm also
Church.
Dutch Reformed, yeah.
Yeah, and so they had a choice of either going to South Africa or coming to Australia, and so they chose Australia. And yeah, and mum and dad were hard workers. Mum worked in the nursing industry. She put herself through night school to learn English while she worked, and so she worked all her life in the aged care industry.
Wow.
Even to the point where she had her own nursing home with 14 people that she used to take care of. Yeah, and then they had another 3 children when they first moved to Australia. So we had
7 of you.
7
Wow,
kids,
yeah.
and all my sisters became nurses.
Wow.
So
They must be proud of you now.
Yeah, so
Tiny.
sort of nursing runs in the family.
Yeah.
And yeah, mum and dad have both passed away now, and but mum put a lot of time and effort into looking after elderly people, and she'd done a fantastic job of that.
Mm.
So her nursing home was like her own home. She treated everyone like family members, and everyone's needs were met. Culturally diverse, diversity.
Wow.
Yeah, and even to their meal plans. So yeah, so she looked after them all pretty well. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much for sharing. Rennie, now? Nick? No? Okay. Right. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. I might have to get you to sign disclaimers if I become famous on your stories. That's amazing. So, yeah, and I just find it also amazing that, our little class just today is really diverse and we can learn from each other. So that's really amazing. Tolerance is learned. It is something we have to teach ourselves. I think by nature we all are a little bit racist, we all a little bit sort of stuck in our own cultures, and and if we're honest with ourselves, it's easier to move on from that. It's easier to then look at what makes us different. And I always say that we did not choose where we were born.
What was funny was back in those days when we were growing up, and the cultural differences between my friends, because I had Italian friends and I had Aussie friends, and I was from a Dutch background. My friend who was Italian, I'd call him a wog, and he would call me a clog wog. And those were just nicknames that we used to banter
what we
around.
call the Dutch.
But, we all got on well with one another.
Yeah.
We respected each other's cultures, and they respected ours, and everybody just seemed to get along.
Do they call you cheesehead?
No.
We used to call the Dutch cheeseheads in Africa, or they call the Germans
Krauts.
Klipkop. stonehead because they're so stubborn. So yeah. Yeah, it was so funny when my husband and I got married. We were at the reception and our bags and stuff was in the car, and then something was wrong. His car wouldn't start or something, and then his mom said, "No, just take my little 323." So his friends went to move all our bags and stuff into his mom's little car so we can go off to our honeymoon. And when we got us about a 4-hour drive to the place where we were going to have our honeymoon was at Kariba Dam at a little chalets and stuff we booked into. We actually gone fishing on our honeymoon. We had written on the back of the car, gone fishing, not just got married, but because he's a fishing fanatic. But yeah, and when we got there, it was the little chalets was a little bit up on the mountain, so we stopped underneath, and he was lagging these heavy bags up the mountain, and he says to me, "What the heck did you pack in these bags?" And when we got upstairs, it's just a big rock like this in one of the bags. And written on it and crying, and said, "Your fault for marrying a stonehead." Because that's what there's like a mixture between the Germans and the Dutch is the stoneheads. So yeah. So that's amazing that we recognize culture and we learn from each other, and and diversity in all these different areas in our lives. Also in gender and relationships and age differences. That's also very prominent, and I think some of the care companies recognize that, and they are trying to get people work with the same geographic people, when they send people out, just because you probably have more in common if you look after an older girl, that you have an older person looking after that person instead of getting a teenager to look after an older person. And that's why they're also shouting quite a bit for males in the industry, because they want the young men that has got autism and other disabilities to be able to go out with other young men, and do things that young men do. But at the same time, I watched a video some time ago, I forget the name again, of a young man that had a car accident. No, he had a diving accident and he became a paraplegic, and he had an old Dutch creation. Well, anyways, European lady that was really, really staunch and really hard on him, and she pushed him to do things. And I think that's what's really good about the Dutch people, the Dutch women especially. They can be really tough to deal with the Germans as well. And sometimes you need that mother figure. You need to push people a little bit. Seen when you're working with dementia now, you realize that sometimes you have to be a little bit tough on them. You have to say, "Come, let's go and have that bath." And they go, "No, I don't want." You say, "Yes, yes, yes, of course you're going." You have to sometimes, without bringing any feelings of aggression into it, you have to act a little bit more assertive, but not be aggressive, because they also pick up on your emotions. So, and sometimes an older generation can be more assertive than what younger girls are. I've heard that in the communities they are struggling with the younger girls not being more assertive enough with clients, and the clients are actually they're not getting proper care. They're not being looked after properly. So that's where age is actually quite important. We don't want to be ageist either. We want to give everyone equal opportunity, and we can learn. I mean, life experience. I have a friend. She's 21. She's an old soul. She is such an old soul. It's just weird, and I can put her in a situation and she can do what she needs to do and be assertive as what she needs to be, even though she's only 21. So it's not always a factor, But yeah, it obviously helps when you're in a community, when you be able to, especially like our 80 babies, we like, driving to the same music, and and you have a generation that still listen to Nat King Cole, and I'll die. I can listen to maybe one song. but you know, sit all day long listening to this. Oh, the Zekas, yeah, geez. Yeah, so, you know, it's good when people can have some things in common, but we also have to respect the differences in that. So, and then in cultural race and ethnicity, we also consider the person's way of life, including their customs and beliefs, and race, a person's biological genetic group, which is most often determined by their skin color, and ethnicity is a person's identification with the social cultural group based on the shared experiences, traditions, or nationality. So I actually feel, in some ways, I feel I have a connection with the South Sea Islander people, because a lot of our customs and especially our dietary things are very, very similar. We love offal, we love, you know, that sweet cake. That's part of our diet, you know, so I can identify with some things they do. I love cooking outside. I love cooking on the fire all the time. I cook out on the fire maybe 3 times a week. And that's why I can identify with them, not because I'm South Sea Islander, you know, but because we identify because of some of the things we do. So I have a little video and I hope it plays. It's so great. Have you seen this little video?
This is a special week. Does anybody know what it is? National Brotherhood Week. What's brotherhood? Treat everyone as though he was your brother. And is there anyone in this United States that we do not treat as our brothers? Yes. Who? The black people. Who else? Absolutely the Indians. Many places in the United States. How are black people treated? How are Indians treated? How are people who are of a different color than we are treated?
They don't get anything in this world.
Why is that?
Because they're different colors.
You think you know how it would feel to be judged by the color of your skin? I don't. Do you think you do? No, I don't think you'd know how that felt unless you had been through it, would you? It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this? Yeah. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day. I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Oh, yes, they are. Yeah. Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people. This is a fact. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground. Well, the brown-eyed people in this room today are going to wear collars so that we can tell from a distance what color your eyes are. Ready, Laurie? Brown-eyed. She's a brown-eyed. You'll begin to notice today that we spend a great deal of time waiting for brown-eyed people. I don't see any yardstick, do you?
Come over there. Just like you better keep that on your desk so the brown-eyed people get out of hand.
Oh, you think if the brown-eyed people get out of hand, that would be the thing to use? Who goes first to lunch? The blue-eyed people. Blue-eyed people may go back for seconds. Brown-eyed people do not.
Brown-eyed.
Don't you know?
Oh, they're not smart. It seems like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything. It seemed like Mrs. Elliott was taking our best friends away from us.
What happened at recess? Were 2 of you boys fighting?
Russell called me names and I came in the gut.
What did he call you?
Brown eyes. They always call us that. They always call us brown eyes.
What's wrong with being called brown-eyed?
It means that we're stupid.
I watched what had been marvelous, cooperative, wonderful, thoughtful children turn into nasty, vicious, discriminating little 3rd graders in the space of 15 minutes. Yesterday, I told you that brown-eyed people aren't as good as blue-eyed people. That wasn't true. I lied to you yesterday. The truth is that brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. Russell, where are your glasses?
I forgot them.
You forgot them. And what color are your eyes? Susan Ginder has brown eyes. She didn't forget her glasses. Russell Ring has blue eyes, and what about his glasses? He forgot them. Yesterday we were visiting, and Greg said, "Boy, I like to hit my little sister as hard as I can. That's fun." What does that tell you about blue-eyed people? The brown-eyed people may take off their collars, and each of you may put your collar on a blue-eyed person. The brown-eyed people get 5 extra minutes of recess. You blue-eyed people are not allowed to be on the playground equipment. You blue-eyed people are not to play with the brown-eyed people. Brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. They're smarter than blue-eyed people. And if you don't believe it, look at Brian. I use Orton Gilman Phonics. We use the card pack. The brown-eyed children won the whole class the first day, and it took them 5.5 minutes to get through the card pack. The second day, it took them 2.5 minutes. The only thing that had changed was the fact that now they were superior people. You went faster than I ever had anyone go through the card pack. Why couldn't you get them yesterday? You did the collars, keep thinking about the collars. Oh, and you couldn't think as well with the collars on. 4 minutes and 18 seconds. How long did it take you yesterday?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. How long did it take you today?
4 minutes and 18 seconds.
What happened?
One down.
What are you thinking of?
This.
I hate today.
You do, I hate too.
Because I'm blue-eyed.
See, I do.
There's nothing, it's not funny, it's not fun, it's not pleasant. This is a filthy, nasty word called discrimination. We're treating people a certain way because they are different from the rest of us. Is that fair?
No.
Nothing fair about it. We didn't say this was going to be a fair day, did we?
No.
And it isn't. It's a horrid day. Are you ready? What did you people who are wearing blue collars now find out today?
I know what they felt like yesterday.
I did too. How did they feel yesterday?
Down. Like a dog on a leash. Yeah. Like you're cheating on not upping the prison. Like you shut it up and you're throwing the key away.
Should the color of some other person's eyes have anything to do with how you treat them?
No.
All right, then should the color of their skin?
No.
Should you judge people
No.
by the color of their skin?
No.
When you see a black man or an Indian or someone walking down the street, are you going to say, look at that silly looking thing?
No.
Does it make any difference whether their skin is black or white?
No.
Or yellow?
No.
Or red?
No.
Is that how you decide whether people are good or bad? Is that what makes people good or bad?
No.
Now you know a little bit more than you knew at the beginning of this week? Okay, now are you back? That feel better? Does the color of eyes that you have make any difference in the kind of person you are?
I've seen this before, I can't remember where I saw it.
It was on Facebook some time ago. That's where I first saw him. Wow, I've never heard it described like that. And it's disappeared off Facebook. I couldn't find it on Facebook. So eventually I found it on YouTube.
It was an art program.
Was she? Yeah. And they actually on YouTube, there's a whole lot of clips on this whole scenario where the people have actually grown up. All those young little ones have grown up now, grown-ups, and they have interviews with them. Probably that's the thing that was on Opera, was it?
Yeah.
Where all these people came back and talked about what, and I think this happened in 1976 or something like that, where there was, I think there was soon after Malcolm X was murdered. So yeah, it was really good. So yeah, so we also think about religious or spiritual beliefs and people expressing their spiritual beliefs. Sometimes we have to look after people with different religions, and maybe we don't agree with them, but with their spiritual religions, but we're not going to influence them on our religion and vice versa. It's mutual respect. My son has recently decided he wants to be a Bahali anyway, in some new age thing. And he's really trying to convince me of it, and he's sending me all these things. My other son is um, doing only eating vegetables, not
vegan.
no, vegan. So, and you know, like I say to both of them, I respect the fact that they're taking a stand. You know, to me, it's amazing that I've raised boys that can decide, I want to be something, you know, I want to make a stand for something. And as I expect them to respect me for my beliefs and, you know, and what I stand for, and, you know, and so we can have open discussions, and we have some really interesting discussions, you know. Obviously it's mostly me listening to them, but it's good. They get the opportunity to express themselves and they're learning through it. So I'm really proud of the fact that they're making stands. And although I'm not necessarily gonna take their belief on, you know, I'm not interested in. So and then food is a big part of our cultures. Whenever you talk about culture, you talk about food, and we can start firing off about, you know, different types of foods like the hanis that mostly the New Zealanders does, but it does creep into the South Sea Islanders also. We do a poiki, which is very similar to the hani, and then of course that rice noodles. Oh man, I tell you what, I will sell something for that. Left arm or something for the Filipino rice noodles. I just love that, you know. And every culture has their, you know, little delicacies that is really. We've got biltong. I don't know if any of you know biltong. I'm not so crazy about goulash actually. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Well, my first husband was German, so my mother-in-law, first mother-in-law, she makes all these German soups with sausages in, and you get blackwurst and, you know, all these German sausages and sauerkraut and the raw fish that's rawhak, and, you know, all these German things. I'm not sure German food is a delicacy. I'm still struggling with that one. I don't quite. I'm not quite convinced. So sorry for, you know. I'd rather take a sweet cake any day as a delicacy. So yeah, and then gender issues, and it's people being able to express who they are, and obviously there's been a lot of oppression and a lot of hurt and things that have come through the years through people's misbeliefs and people's misunderstanding of, you know, who people are. Ultimately, each one of us has the right to choose. And that's what we teach our children, and that's what we would like to be there for our clients. I've looked after a few older clients that have come out of the closet and, you know, at 80. I had some old boys that, you know, they married and everything, and then at 80 they form relationships with somebody else. And, you know, and a lot of times I think honestly it's so innocent. It's not about the sex. It's about somebody clicking on a specific level, like 3 years old or 4 years old, and you walk around holding their hand and you've got things in common with them, and you know, you share like what do they call it when you're finding your soulmate, you know, that connection that you find with somebody. And that's amazing. We respect that. We advocate for them, you know, we stand up for them, that they have the right, especially with dementia. It's such a lonely disease. People feel so lonely when they land up losing some of the, it's like, I think, I don't know, but I've heard them say and experienced through the last few years, it's like a blackness that comes over them, you know, like a void, and it's scary. And if they find a friendship in that, and they find somebody whose hand they can hold through that, so what if they've got a married partner outside there? That partner's not there with them, you know, and they don't want to be alone. And so we protect them. And I mean, some people find it hard to accept that, because they have a partner outside, and you are now condoning a relationship, or you are encouraging a relationship that might harm the partner outside. We also do try to protect the partners outside. Obviously, if they arrive, we do try to separate them or take them, but in all my years, in the 30 years I've been in HK, I've never seen old people get it on. I haven't. I just think they have a friendship, they have a companionship, which is amazing. And again, about the generational things, sexual orientation is what we are attracted to, and it's commonly divided between heterosexual or homosexual, which is same-sex, or bisexual. Although a person's orientation rarely causes issues in the workplace, other people may take offense and discriminate against it because of it, and we are going to face some of those kind of issues when we start working with people in the community, and we have to find our place. I have a very, very special friend that is a man that's a gay man that I worked with, and we were working together in dementia when we were doing the vote for marriage. And, we had long, open discussions. For me, I wouldn't have voted for it because I just felt that if you're not religious, then, it shouldn't affect you. But, and then there was de facto relationships already that was recognized. So, we had long discussions, and I do understand people's need. And it doesn't matter, if you are gay, you can go to church. We have gay pastors, we have gay uh, priests, we have people that are in that community that believe in God. And God does not, discriminate. He does not look at the way we look at things. It's different. It's above us, it's beyond us. We don't understand it. We cannot, judge it. Ultimately, it's not our place. And besides all of that, I don't want to be religious, but we're talking about religion, is that I don't think that one sin is bigger than another. There was a murderer on the cross. He went to heaven. So there's no big sin, no small sin. So, if people want to point it as if it's a sin that somebody is in a same-sex relationship, then they have to think again. It's nobody's place to judge anyone, and we have to really put our heads through things like that. The same as with racism. I grew up in a community where racism was a real issue. It's a tangible issue because the South African government was racist. We had segregation. I went to a school where I was in a white school where we were only white kids in the school. Until I was finished with school, we were only white children in our school. My dad was a black man. Well, on his passport, it said that he was a black man. So he couldn't go into the same places that my mum and us could go into, just because of the color of our skin. We do not identify necessarily with the black people because I'm colored. In Africa, we don't identify with the black people, other than it's different in Australia, which is really, to me, a concept that was amazing to learn, that if you are colored, Aborigine or Torres Strait person.
Years ago too, because the Aboriginal people, they were outcasts, and they too had to, when they ever went to anywhere, they had to get pieces of paper to say that they were allowed to cross in from one state to another state and to go to work for whoever they were that they can, and they only had to stay for that certain amount of time that they were working. Yeah.
And even I believe that going just into town,
Yeah.
they had to get a letter from who they were working, as a pass.
They were all segregated.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when like with some of the Aboriginal people, and that the church, the Catholic Church then came into it, and that was another big mess. But anyway, that was then they all got segregated. They took all of them when they stole the kids out of
the
the
culture.
culture, yeah.
Mm.
And it was like even with the Torres Strait Island people, they when the church went up there, the Church of England church went in up onto Torres Strait, and they were all segregated because they were trying to get them to not practice their own beliefs and what they believed in. They were saying, no, you don't do that. We're here now, so you go with what we're telling you, what we've got you to do. So I mean, like,
And there was also these stories, and I've heard about the history of that they were paid with drugs. Was it? Do
they
you
were
know
paid,
anything?
most if they were paid by, say, with flour, but then the flour and stuff like that, they were paid in that way, because now they've only just discovered that the ones that did work through the stations and stuff like that, now getting the pay that their forefathers hadn't got before.
Yeah,
So
it was
now the
withheld.
government has
Yeah.
come in now and said, well, they still have to prove
Yeah.
that those
Yeah.
people worked for that person and to get that money.
And Stephanie, do you know about the cutoff point in Mackay? Was it at the city gates? It was that side of city gates was like the black community was on that side of city gates and the white community on this side. Was
Yeah, because most of them, the South Sea Islander people live out towards Walston and down out towards Homebush Way and that stuff there. But then a lot of them also lived up towards Bowen. And Bowen, you've got a big community in Bowen. You got a big community down towards from Rocky down through to Bundaberg, around Maryborough area there. And they all end up with sugar cane and stuff, just like up with Bowen and that round. There's a few up in Townsville and stuff up there. So yeah, and I mean they did have an Aboriginal camp, as they called it then, down here I think at Baker's Creek.
Baker's Creek,
down
yeah.
Baker's Creek there, yeah.
and they used to have to get
Yeah,
a letter of a paper to come into town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a lady that came to talk to us about she works for the ministry. She came some time ago and spoke to one of my groups about segregation in Mackay and how deep rooted it is. And some of the things, like there was an Aborigine army that went out and had to go, and what did they have to do? Kill other Aborigine
They
people?
rounded up the ones here because that's just like destroying the leaf.
Yeah.
How the leaf got its name, because there was a camp up there and they chased them. And then the Aboriginal lady jumped over off the cliff with her baby. I think the baby survived. Yeah. Yeah. And that was another big story around there. So I mean, there's a few places that are named after Aboriginal people or named and that for different meanings as well too. But I mean, now today with racism and stuff, everything got changed. Everything was changing.
But the Aborigine people, or the Torres Strait Islander, do they consider mixed race people part of them, or is there segregation
well, I mean,
between?
Today there is a lot of mixed marriages, so you
Yeah.
can't disperse of that. I mean, you got a lot of kids, black and white kids, that are together, so and they all go to school together, they all mix in.
I know a lot of Aboriginals down in Victoria who are whiter than me. It's amazing culturally how much that is.
But they still identify, though. That's the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's the point. Yeah.
Because I mean, you can't it's like Tasmania.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
Tasmanians and that, and you wouldn't even know because they're just
Yeah.
white.
Yeah.
And when they say, "Oh no, I'm a Murray or a Corey from here," and they say, "Oh, they look funny at you."
It's funny confusion for me as a youngster growing up around those areas.
Well, you look at Northern Territory. Northern Territory's got blonde hair.
Yeah, and blue
eyes and black skin.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? I just think that's so beautiful. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, it's so much better coming from you. I have I did another unit in diversity, specifically in Torres Strait Islander diversity, Aborigine history. So for my
Because that's another thing, because with the Torres Strait Island kids, they learn Torres Strait language because there's certain dialects with them that they learn first, and English is their second language. Where most of the Aboriginal kids, if they on communities, they learn their language, but then most of the time it gets taken away from them. Because I mean, like the South, I think Western Australia, South Australia, the Noongar people up there, they've got certain dialects as well, but most of their language is now going. It's all being gone.
I mean, my daughter-in-law is
I saw the thing on the ABC where they're trying to implement that back into the school to teach the Aboriginal kids their cultural language.
Because it's dying out. My daughter-in-law, she's very dark, South Sea Islander, very, very, very dark, and she doesn't speak Creole at all. She doesn't.
But
She
it
doesn't
doesn't
know
take
how
you
to
long
do it.
that you can pick up on though.
Yeah.
On the different things that they're saying. I mean, I personally, I haven't been brought up on language because we never spoke it at home. So, and none of my relatives ever spoke of it because my auntie married a Torres Strait Island man, but he spoke it around all his kids, so they know different things and stuff in Torres Strait, and they were taught how to dance and stuff like that. Well, the boys did anyway. They did most of it, and so yeah. So I mean, that's another thing too is what the kids are taught at home, and that then later on in life, most of it's gone away from us. So yeah.
Culturally, I've got a mate who's a South Sea Islander, and everyone calls him Uncle Ryder.
Yeah.
And him, even to me, is Uncle Ryder. He's brought me into family barbecues and whatnot, family interest.
Well, that way then if you're allowed to call them by their first name, and I can't call you if I wasn't allowed to call you by your first name, I'd have to call you like Auntie Ledger or Uncle so and so or something like that. Because if we went to another place, then they had to be either Auntie or Uncle, or it was Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah.
Same as Romeo's dancing, he was in my youngest, he was in Aboriginal dancing when they had it here, and everyone called her Auntie Deb, like the teacher was Auntie Deb. So. But that was good because she was teaching them language as well, which they don't have it anymore.
No.
They don't have anything like that outside of school. Like Romeo's in Vic Park, and they're awesome for culture.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there's nothing in the community for them, I don't think. Yeah.
Brilliant. So that's, and we do the same, and that's another small identification we have because we call anyone 10 years older than us, we call auntie and uncle. We, it's part of our culture to do that. I think it's so much better coming from you, and thank you so much for sharing that. Because, and that's what we do, we try to strive towards is finding a collaboration where if we wanna encourage cultural sensitivity, we need to do it as a partnership. We have to do it together because I cannot go out there and advocate, even though I might have some African blood in me. I'm white as anything, so it's hard for me to advocate. And in Africa, the African people do not accept us, and the white people don't accept us. So we sort of like, we put our own little culture in the middle. We have adapted a bit of this and a bit of that, and we've made our own culture. But the colored people in Africa is an old culture as well by themselves. They're at least 200-300 years old, so they have established. We've got our own little hometowns and our own little home grounds on that. So, I think that has covered that subject very well. Thank you very much. So, when we talk about human rights, and sadly at this stage, a lot of the laws and human rights even our care laws, and a lot of those laws are underneath the bio law. So our human rights are diminishing very, very, very fast. and hopefully it will return back to what it should be after this virus decides to leave us, and after we have won the war on it, or won the war on the elite attitudes. But sadly, there's a diminishing of our rights all around the world, not just Australia. And it's a little bit hard to even talk about human rights at this stage for me, because a lot of it has been put on ice. It's like...
I know the movie Animal House was saying with that. All animals are created equal, but some are more equal than others.
Yeah.
Those are pigs.
Oh, yeah, because I was talking, because I was watching the kids show Bluey the other day, and they got all these different coloured dogs, and I'm thinking, and I said to my son, I said, you know what? I said, why can't people do that? And he said, why? I said, well, you've got different coloured dogs. He said, you've got different types of dogs. I said, but do they discriminate against one another?
They still
I
a
said,
dog?
No.
No.
I said, where people, even though you've got different coloured skin, there's different races and whatever, I said, yeah, they discriminate against one another. I said, but you don't look at that in animals.
My husband's got a...
They've forgotten about that saying, especially in the animals.
Yeah.
Some are more equal than others.
Yeah.
My husband's very, I don't know, they should create a word for it. My husband's very scared, I suppose, not scared. He's a bit racist towards the Chinese. Let's put it like that. Why, I wonder. But anyway, it's not the Chinese people, because we do know some Chinese people that, are trying to come out underneath the, the communistic regime, and so it's actually against the political environment than what it is against them. But, and especially at this stage in our whole story. But in the beginning, before he really defined it in his brain, he was always going, the Chinese. And I kept saying, well, lucky you were not born a Chinese, It's like, we cannot choose where we were born, can we? We just popped out and there, we go. So, yeah, it's not our choice. So, yeah, there's the anti-discrimination laws, and hopefully those will come back into power eventually. So it's good for us also to just consider all sorts of biases that we sometimes develop through our families and our peers and stuff. We develop some sort of biases and unfair treatments towards people just because we bias. When we do, and you guys have done that, working with people with disabilities, that lady that was talking about using disabled people as inspirational porn. Remember that little video we saw? Even the other day, I went to listen to some new political party. They invited us for it's a talk, and there's this man that came around, and we went to listen to him. And he was using this one disabled man as inspiration for us to, kick our butts into gear and take up the sword and, fight the good fight and all that. And I thought, it took me back to this woman that was talking against the fact that we use another group for the benefit of another group, just using somebody who's disabled and saying, well, if I can do it, we can do it, and she has this little saying. She says, going into a bookshop, standing there with a smile on your face and a good attitude, it's not going to turn the books into Braille, is it? Just because, you have a good attitude, it doesn't change who you are. So, and that's where stereotyping comes in, and bias ideas sometimes are influencing us. It's things like putting people in boxes, like thinking about if you see an African person, you might just without thinking think, they might be a good athlete, or you, like you're saying, like a lot of the sports groups are made up dark people. Why? Because we think we've got the stereotype thing in our back of our brain, thinking, oh, they must be good athletes, you know. Or you look at an Asian guy comes into class and you think, well, he can do this math sum, no problem, you know, because we've been stereotyping through the years. Sometimes it's not something negative, but sometimes it is something negative, but it still puts people in boxes, you know. And just overcoming these things through respect and courtesy. Just because I'm African now does not make me a good athlete. I can't run, you know.
One of the funniest interactions I ever had was down at Lovell with one of my mates. He was giving cheek to the taxi driver who was driving this to and fro. He goes, you know, we're going to do a runner on you as soon as you pull up, you know. He says, don't even worry about it, mate. I'm a Kenyan, I'll catch you.
So he's got himself into that stereotyping himself already.
I just about died.
And it's good when a culture can overcome that as well and make a joke of it, you know.
It's been such a sweet smile.
Yeah.
Just bloody brilliant.
Your friend just saw something.
Yeah.
We paid you extra.
Oh, right.
Yeah, one of my best friends. One of my best friends is dark African. He's from Sudan, and he's married an Australian lady, and you know it's just crazy. And we invite him over. We have a little dance, and he does this real African dance. He throws his legs up in the air, and he does this, and it's just crazy. Because some videos of him. He's so funny. He's so funny, but he can make a joke about it. You know, he can take it as a good cheer. So just, you know, keeping ourselves, minds open, opening our minds and climbing out of our little boxes and not stereotyping, just accepting people for who they are, you know. One of my very best friends, Sarah, she was born in the South Sea Islanders, but she's not South Sea Island, and she identifies 100% because she was born there. Her mum is from PNG and her dad is from New Zealand, but she speaks Creole and she absolutely, you know, and that's a classic example that somebody doesn't necessarily have to be a specific culture to understand the culture or to, you know, have identify biases or, you know, understanding just where we are from it. I suppose that is the whole idea of this unit, just giving it a second thought. I think sometimes we're scared to do it because we're scared we will offend somebody. I had my class Sarah set up for me last year, beginning of last year.
That's why things are changing now. Have a look how stupid half the things are with changing names of products and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like the cheese this morning, you know, like Coon cheese has been around for like 90 years or whatever. The guy's name was Coon. And now they're changing it because they think they're discriminating against the black people.
So silly.
We've gone from one extreme to the other.
To the other, yeah.
Scared we might offend someone.
Scared we might offend.
Be careful with comments like that. In male support letter.
I mean, they're just lies. I mean, I've never ever seen a red skin Indian.
Yeah, there's none in Australia. But you know, my very first class at Axiom was 95% South Sea Islander Aborigine, and I struggled with this unit. I just not struggled with it, but I had to be so careful about not trying to tell them something that they already know, because I know I can take a page out of their book, you know. It's
but that way too, then you can always turn it back on.
Yes, and we did the same, what I, you know, got them to share and that, and I actually, it was one of my best classes I've ever had. Every class we were eating, they were always bringing food, and it was just, yeah, I think I picked up about 10 kilos in that class. Hey? Yeah, so, and then sharing values and religion, and sharing, even though we have differences, we have values we share. I share value with Renee because of her passion for children. I share value, you know, with each one of you because of your passion for disability and for caring for people. We share that value, and we try to find the shared values in it, you know. Me and Sarah get on like a house on fire because we've both been through losing a lot of family members. We've been through really hardships, and then we eat the same thing. So that makes it easy, you know. So we love camping together and love doing stuff together because we can tell each other things about hardships that we've gone through, and we can understand that, you know, we click on that. And then, you know, when she makes something for breakfast, I know what she's making, and when I make dinner, she knows what I'm making. So it's an added benefit there. But yeah, she's my best friend, and you know, we share similar values, and of course we both also have passion for training, and you know, and have people passion for actually really putting people into the industry with passion, which is something else we share as a value. And that's things that we can try focus on, we can try zoom into when we meet people. It's finding those passions and values. Yeah, and reflecting on the biases, I've already spoken about that.
You can't really teach compassion, eh?
No, you can't, but you can cultivate it.
Yeah.
You know what, when I worked in Good Shepherd in earlier years, when I came to Australia, I quite often there was a large group of Indian girls and Nepalese girls that I was working with. And for them, that was just a job. And the other day, one of the care companies, she was reflecting on it. She says, oh yeah, everyone that goes through this course are just from job active, because a lot of the job active people are putting people into this course because that's the way they can get jobs these days. And I say, well, what's the difference? 4 or 5 years ago, we were employing people from India and from Philippines and everywhere because they needed jobs, not because they had a passion for people, you know. So what's the difference? So if somebody hasn't worked all their life and now, you know, they get forced by the government to come into care, you can still cultivate that passion. And yeah, I did with the Indian girls. I had to go, and sometimes you had to say to them, this is not just a sack of potatoes, this is a human being. See them as your mum or your grandma, and you had to cultivate that with them, get on their level and say to them. And what I quite often did is I introduced them to those people. You know, this old girl that was lying there, I would say, did you know that she was a teacher? And then I would go and I said, oh, come on, Sarah, share with us. What did you do in the school? Which school did you work? And then you get them to meet them on a personal level. They might be, I've looked after this person for 5 years before I got there, but they never knew who they were, you know, and that was where the connection started forming. And then when they started having connection with these people, they were able to care for them with compassion. But without that connection, you don't have, it's just a person, it's just somebody you don't know, and it doesn't matter to you. So you can work on that, you can develop that. So working with awareness with our own limitations, and like I was saying, I have a limitation to share about the Aborigine culture and about the, you know, hardships that they've gone through. Some of the wordings, this one woman that came to share with us that some of the descriptions and things that was in the government paperwork less than 10, 15 years ago, still so offensive, you know. Yes, at the same time, we recognize things like coon cheese and redskins, you know. I mean, it's like deaf and dumb. It wasn't an offensive term, and it wouldn't have been an offensive term until somebody started, you know, saying, oh, this is offensive, you know, because it didn't originate from an offensive place. So, and I'm sure there is terms that we are using in life today that we accept as acceptable terms that might be frowned on in 10 or 15 or 100 years time, looking back at, oh, they called them that? How could they do that, you know? So it's, and interesting thing is, some years ago, I had some friends that was they were from France, and they came to visit us, and we were talking about something, and then somebody hurt their thumb, and he said, oh, my puss hurt. And I'm, ah! And you know, puss is a really, really rude word in Afrikaans. And we're like, ah! Like getting all flustered. You know, one word might mean something in one language, and in another language, it's absolutely, totally innocent, you know. So yeah, from language to language, we might offend. So there might be English words we're using now that are in some other languages really, really offensive. And then they look back in years and they think, you know. So yeah, limits in our awareness, social limits with our history, our understanding of people, where they are from, who they are, understanding about the Filipino people. I mean, it took me a while to even understand, and I know Nicholas was born in Australia, and people look at him and they think, oh, he's Filipino, he must be, but he was born in Australia, he's been here for so many generations. Or how, your mom and dad Filipino, were they born? Mom and your dad was born in Australia? And I looked after a Chinese man, and he was William, what was his surname? Yeah, but he was Chinese, and he's been in Australia for 3 generations, and he does not speak Chinese.
I had a lady the
Yeah.
same this week come to I run a martial arts club, and I had a lady coming this week, looks like Thai, dresses like Thai, little children that look like Thai. And I said, oh, where were you born? She said, Bangkok. And I said, oh, and I said, do you know? I said, oh, my partner comes from here and here. She said, I would never know where that is. She said, I've lived in Australia all my life.
Yeah.
I came out here when I was 3 months old. She said, I understand Thai, but I can't speak it.
Yeah. I had another, yeah.
Take it for granted.
I had another lady I looked after, what is her name? Oh, she was so close to my heart. But they up from Bowen's side, her husband's a farmer up there, and she was born in Australia, and she is also Chinese heritage, I think, but also she was born here, and she looks Chinese. Barbara, her name is Barbara, she's passed away now. She was, you know, I just loved her so dearly. She had such a beautiful smile on her that every time she smiles, the whole room lights up. And yeah, but you know, you think you can place people, misinterpret things, just be looking at them, you know. And quite often I have to remind my husband that a lot of Chinese has been in Australia much longer than what the Australians have been, you know. So I'm not saying we have to accept communism, not at all. I'm just saying we have to accept people, you know. We have to separate them from their governments and separate them from bad attitudes. Yeah. So and sometimes, yeah, there's some taboos and offensive topics that, and it's something I actually forget, and I should include in my slides sometimes a little bit more, as being aware of the fact that some of the slides I'm showing may have people that have passed, pictures of people that are not with us anymore. Sometimes I speak about people that have passed, and I know that it's a taboo subject. It's something that you have to recognize and have respect for in the indigenous cultures. Reflecting on supported own ability, working inclusively with the understanding of others. During interaction with our clients or employees, workplace, we should refrain from imposing our values, beliefs, and attitudes on them. It's important to maintain a non-judgmental practice. This means we don't take our moral judgments like that's wrong or whatever that would affect a person's well-being. And identifying, act on ways to improve our own social awareness. What matters most and how we see ourselves. Yeah, I'm a bit like a cat. I do see myself as a lion sometimes. Chapter 2, appreciate diversity and inclusiveness and their benefits, in valuing and respecting diversity and inclusiveness across all areas of work. So diversity has many benefits in the workplace. It allows people from different backgrounds with various skills to contribute. For example, a customer service organization, having people from different cultures can allow them to relate easier with a wide range of customers. And that's set with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as well. And quite often now you will see companies employing Indigenous people as their receptionists or as the the face of the company to try, especially in health services, because the health services has failed the Indigenous communities.
Mines do a lot of mine companies do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I mean, in some ways, you can also be offended by that because
Yeah.
it's kind of like they're using them as a commodity again to further their business. I understand that in health services, we are trying to help people and they don't want to come to the services because they don't identify or they think the white man doesn't have their, rightly so too, don't have their best interest at heart. So then, you know, trying to cross that bridge or trying to reach out beyond that. But in mining services, the question then comes, well, maybe they just want to exploit the environment and using that as a face just to, yeah. But then again, who pays the taxes? So where does the money come from? So that's the benefit in diversity, acknowledging importance of the workplace and supporting incentives to promote and utilize diversity, encouraging inclusiveness in hiring practices and getting to know others in the workplace, their experiences and potential. A workplace is inclusive, of the employees feel more welcome regardless of their race, religion, disabilities or sexuality. Behavior that is inclusive will ensure that we work as members that are involved in relevant work talks without discrimination. For example, a work meeting that is supposed to include all members of work teams should not exclude some members because of their age, race, or gender. Appreciating diversity, inclusive. These slides are hurting my eyes. Contribute to the development of workplace and professional relationships based on the appreciation of diversity and inclusiveness. Ooh, I can't see this at all. Can you? Workplace relations, professional relationships are building blocks of communications in the workplace, regardless of diversity. Important characteristics of workplace relationships are trust, mutual respect, mindfulness, yeah, and effective communication. So
It's just that black brown that they're written.
yeah, that blue is really, I must remember to change this. I always look at the slides when I'm busy with them and then I think, oh, I need to change it and then I don't. Because I don't write it.
White writing.
Yeah.
It sort of blends in a lot with the colour.
Have to write everything down, getting old. Showing respect, so reflecting on our perspectives, identify backgrounds and act with respect. Promote understanding in chapter 2.3, use the workplace that makes environment safe for all. Safe work practices is tolerance, being informed, respect, communicate, and equal opportunities. And how does that relate to diverse cultures? Just including people, I mean, sometimes it's hard for people to understand why we have some safety methods in place, because they might not have that in their own country or they might not have seen that before. So just, I mean, like I quite often had to walk around with Shepherd and keep moving the lifters from the fire extinguishers. People just, oh, there's a spot there and park it there and they don't think. And, and it's so hard to overcome that. And that's sometimes a cultural thing because they just, they're not aware of safety is not as paramount in like in the some of the islands, some Filipinos and the Filipinos are the hard ones to understand with some of the safety methods. I don't know, I suppose it's like coming from a third world country myself, it's like we don't really have issues like, or not like we don't have issues like that, but we don't have regulations in place, strict regulations, like you can get fined in this country $3,000 or $4,000 if you do that, you know. So because it's not an issue, it's kind of based more. I think sometimes the safety standards are also used as a disciplinary tool, so that sort of makes it more dangerous, really, instead of being logical about it and being just common sense. People are using it, well, you know, you can get a fine, or you can get a warning just because you've done that. And they, you know, especially in the mining industry, they use that as a disciplinary tool, and then people get blasé about safety. But it, you know, in general, that's just attitudes. It's not necessarily cultural attitudes. Yeah. So but when we do not like somebody, it is hard to look after their safety, because safety is actually in safety, I'm looking after you, you're looking after me, because we do miss things. We're human, we miss things, and if we don't like each other, then I might not look after you as well as what I would look after somebody I like, you know. I have one young Filipino girl that I worked with, Fedina, and I love her so much. She's like my little sister. And if I work with her, you know, I'm always watching out for her, looking after her, you know, protecting her. And that's the attitude I just, she feels like my little sister. And I just, if my little sister was with me, if I work with some of the bigger boys, I don't care for them, you know. They can look after their own toes, and I just keep going. Where for dinner, my attitude changes, you know, without me realizing, but my attitude does change. And so we have to be able to treat people fairly, and that, you know, look after them. Principle of cultural safety, how to improve health and well-being of others and to empower the users of the service, recognized in qualities in various areas, and avoid biases towards certain cultures. What time is it? Am I blabbling on? At 10 more minutes. You all right? You still awake? It's hard after the holidays to concentrate, hey? Chapter 3, show respect for diversity in communication with people. And as we spoke about words, and here at the moment, the issue about all the product names, it's important to demonstrate respect. And I suppose indirectly people are just trying to show respect. There needs to probably be some sort of a balance there. You know, like in everything, we need a balance. Whether in our communication with people, this could be the difference between somebody coming away feeling satisfied with communication, and them feeling as though they didn't get valued, and their communication it also applies in all forms of communication. Recognize and interact with diversity, like in hearing, and you know, we are guarding against miscommunication, and responding sensitively to somebody in you know, actually hearing them, maybe applying the method of repeating back to them when they've said something to us, you know, to just confirm what they've said, because there's this filter we have in our cultures and how we grew up. And I see this with my husband, and we next week on the 20th, we'll be married 25 years. So, you know, we misunderstand each other all the time, you know, all the time. And I've been with him, you know, half my life. And how much more do I misunderstand people I've just met? You know, if you've been with somebody that long. With us, he's British. His one grandfather is from Scotland, his other grandfather is from Ireland, his other grandfather is from England, and his grandma's from Australia. So he's got this real British heritage, and I'm Dutch. I'm Dutch, Portuguese, African. So my culture is so different to his culture, even though we're both white. The way I smear my sandwich, so much different to him. The way I hang the washing on the line, the way he jokes, the way I joke, we've got a dry Australian humor and our African from my South African background, and he's got that real upper stiff nose British humor. He doesn't understand our humor, and I was like, that's funny, and he goes, who's laughing? You know, it's the only one laughing. He doesn't really get along with the Australians very well. He's really had to learn to understand their dry humor. But there's that filter where we misunderstand. Somebody says to me, oh, you a cracker, and you misunderstand that and think he's meaning that you rude or you a breaker or something, where you're actually just saying to him, oh, you good, you're a good one, you know. And I have this friend, and I've told her I use her as example a lot. She's Australian biker, and she's got a mohawk, and she's got sleeves all the way up, and but she's got the biggest heart. And we worked together, and there was this one young man, he came from Nepal, and he was so sexist, and he was in, and he wouldn't take instructions from the girls at all. And a lot of our nurses, RNs, are young little Filipino girls, and he wouldn't take instruction from them. And the one day Lynn walked up to him, she said to him, this is Australian, we do it this way. And, you know, and he was up in arms, his hair was standing up, and he went off to management, and he went to report her that she is being sexist and racist. And because he took it like she was saying to him, we're better in Australia, you should do it our way, you know. And I went to her and I said to Lynn, what did you say to him? You know, Lynn's big trouble, she has to go and do anger management classes and all sorts. And she says, all I meant is that we are mates here, we do things together.
We're all in the same bucket.
I mean, really, that's not offensive, is it? You know, and it's just the way you understand it. And for him to understand mateship, you know, and just not misunderstand. But she puts her foot in it all the time, because she doesn't think before she says something, and she just gets in there, and people misunderstand her motivation behind it. So we always have to remember there's you know, the way we are, the way we hold ourselves can offend people, and can be, you know, offensive to somebody, or they can misunderstand because of their cultural backgrounds. And sometimes there's these filters that things come through, noise or information that is lost or incorrect, and emphasis are, you know, the Australians all have this singing way that they talk, and everything is a question, you know. And I was like, are you asking me a question or not? You know, it's like, are you there? You know, or
How you
going? Or this is a great day. You know, it's like there's something behind it, and we are very monotone, and you know, we're really boring talkers. I mean, I'm amazed that you guys will stay awake when I'm talking sometimes, because I have a very monotone way of talking. I have learned to make, you know, put a bit of pitch in my talk, but I had to learn that, because that's not naturally my culture. So that's but the emphasis, putting emphasis in the wrong place, and, you know, understanding. And then abbreviations, that's another thing, you know, servo and all the O's, bottle O and all the O's, tenses, abbreviations, all of those. It's, you know, we are multicultural, we come from all over the world, and we understand, you know, things differently. The one word that I really still don't get, people say a roadside assist. It's roadside assistance. It's not.
That's the Amy.
That's not a word, and it's not correct. Yeah, so we're a global village in some ways not. And I mean, at the moment, we all cut off from each other. We don't know what's going on anywhere else in the world. We don't get the news through. It's a little frustrating. The only news you really get through is from your friends abroad, you know. There's no international news really much anymore. And some of the news we get is not even really correct. So it's really hard to feel connected with the outside world at the moment. But we still are a little bit of like you were saying, you know, we have multicultural relationships all over the place, and you know, in our own families we do too. So we are still a global village, even though they might not want us to be, but we are. Yeah, so demonstrating respect and getting the spelling and pronunciation correct, acquiring necessary aids. It's like I was saying, you know, the other day I was talking about my prince, and Stephanie picked up. She knew who I was talking to, but why I couldn't call him uncle because I think I did call him uncle in the beginning, and then it wasn't sitting right with him. And then I thought, well, I can't call him just Bill. It was just not right. So I started calling him Prince William, and that's who he is for me, is Prince William. So, but it was my way of showing him that I respect him, you know. So, and he's just one of, you know, we shouldn't have favorites, but he's one of my favorites. You'll end up having these little favorites, and caring for him. He's a South Sea Islander, big old South Sea Islander boy, and I've looked after him for 5 years, and you know, and that pronunciation of using that uncle and auntie to show respect. You know, sometimes when it doesn't come from the right place, it's sometimes also a little bit awkward, isn't it? When, you know, somebody says it and it's not really your culture to do it, so why are you doing it, you know? But you still want to show respect. Mr. and Mrs. obviously is an easier way to do that than doing that.
Because when I was at the police station, he's a Torres Strait Islander, but I called him uncle. And anyway, me and my other sidekick, we called him uncle, but he was big and he knew it. Anyway, we called him one day and came past and he said, "Oh, hi uncle, how you going?" And anyway, this big tall white policeman came along and said to him, "Hello uncle." He said, "Excuse me," he said, "but the girls call me uncle out of respect." He said, "You can call me by my first name or you can call me by my rank." You see, and then he come back and he said, "Well, what do you girls got?" We said, "What?" He said, "Well, got in the trouble for calling him uncle." We said, "Yeah, we know," because we said, "That's disrespectful because you are a man, so you can call him by whatever you know, what he says for you to call him." I said, "We've got respect for him. That's why we call him that." And he said, "Oh, I didn't say." I said, "Yeah." I said, "All it comes down to is the word respect."
Yeah, it's like patronizing. It's like, you're doing it to mock me, or are you doing it, you know, from where's your heart at, you know?
That's across all cultures.
Absolutely.
Just to get that respect from the person, or you get their permission to call them that.
And that's the way to go, is to ask them in the beginning, how would you like me to call you? Yeah. So,
also, I've got a young client who I call him Mr. PJ, and he calls me Mr. Scott. And it's not the last name, I think, but it's the respect side of it. And I encourage that greatly with him, just because it shows that, hang on, why are we?
It's a professional relationship.
That sort of brings it into light.
Absolutely. All right, so we shall have a little break. Okay, chapter 3.2, use verbal and non-verbal communication constructively to establish and develop, maintain effective relationships and maintain trust and confidence. And as I was saying earlier, that in some languages, some things means something else. Like in the UK and probably it means okay. And we've got that little icon also that we use when we SMS people. Japan, it means money. And Russia, it means zero. And in Brazil, it's an insult.
So what does that mean?
Probably. Who knows? Sorry, just the other way is coming.
I have been using that on social media a fair bit. In the Brazilian way.
So it's like what the kids using that. That's also quite rude, actually. So yeah, anyway, I won't go into it. But some hand signs can be quite rude and quite be insulting. You know, it's like telling somebody off. It's like you can be playful by sticking your tongue out at a little kid, but if you do that to an older person, it's really, really rude. So. And also the space that we have, personal space, use of silence correctly, not, and then of course the cultural responses on emotions, and as well as speaking to men, older men, trying to teach them in some cultures that is, a no-go. It's offensive to do that. Eye contact in some cultures, if you hold eye contact too long with them, they feel of challenged.
Too tight a hand grip.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, I say, and I understand the eye contact thing, and we like making eye contact in Western cultures, but like if you stare a dog down, then you challenge the dog, So if you stare somebody down, they might interpret it as if you are challenging them. And especially working with people from cultures like the Eastern cultures, they have quite a different, look on that woman talking to them. And this one young man I told you about that was from Nepal. He really struggled with it, because his culture was so male dominant, and it was just the way it was. It's the way he was raised, and it was still respecting him, but even trying to communicate and get through to him. I had to at some stage sit with him and say, "Do you listen to your mum?" And he goes, "Yeah, I listen to my mom." I said, "Why do you listen to your mom?" "Because she's my mom." I said, "Well, then you better start thinking of me like your mom, because there's no other way we're going to get this job done. We have to work together. It's, you can't, if you don't know anything," he had some strange ideas, "then you can't get teamwork going if you're not able to submit and not able to work as a team." So, and then stress can be a huge communication barrier. Because it brings a lack of trust as well, and preconceptions and attitudes and difference, and illness or pain can sometimes be a communication barrier. If I don't feel well, man, if I've got a PMS, luckily I don't have PMS anymore, but so much. Don't come in on the wrong day.
But I'm like that. If I don't feel well, just leave me.
Oh yeah, I might just bite your head off, and you didn't mean it. And sometimes we take that personal, when somebody's not feeling well and they snap at us, and then you take it personal. So lack of common ground, lack of empathy for the other person, social cultural differences. Be aware from communication in different groups. Some people don't like persistent questioning. I've also learned and read that, especially the old Aboriginal culture, they don't like being questioned a lot. Direct questioning, loud voices. I'm very loud though. Always come and close the door. It's so loud. I was saying something, it was in our class, I think I was saying something about why people were scared of me, and somebody said it's because I'm loud. I don't know. I can't remember where some story came out. Sometimes people can, take offense at that. Lengthy eye contact, as we said, invading personal space. I'm a little bit sensitive with that, but that's just a personal thing, not necessarily a cultural thing. That I need my space. So display respect, active listening and responding to people's needs. Respect all people and involve them in important decisions making, and especially it's in our personal care focus anyways for them to make decisions for themselves. Their values and protocols, methods of doing things, and inappropriate language. Chapter 3.3, where language barriers exist, use effective strategies to communicate the most effective way. With increasing diversity in Australia's society, it's more common to come across people who don't share the language, who don't share a language with us, or who aren't fluent in our language. In these situations, you may be able to rely on interpreters. if you need to know, the available interpret resources available, that whole slide needs to be rewritten. Sorry. Yeah, you get an app, and I've used Google Translate quite a few times when I have with my Italian
Yeah.
old girl that I looked after. She lost her language when she grew old, when she got dementia, so she reverted back to Italian. And I used the app to talk to her,
How much did you
and
light up?
yeah, she loved. She just loved it that I could talk to her through the app, and that's really great. Um, and they always talk about interpreters in these units, and I don't know if that's so easy and readily available. I had to translate again with my first husband when he died, because when I came to Australia, I had to prove how my surname's changed from my maiden name to now, and that there was a missing link with my first husband's information. And I couldn't obtain any information. The only information I could get at the end was from the police station where they had the report, and it was all written in Afrikaans. So when the police sent the report through to me, I had to get an interpreter in Australia to translate it. And it was really hard to find somebody, and it costed a lot of money. It was $600 to have that report translated to get the information that I needed for my immigration. So yeah, being immigrant, I know it's not that easy. It's not that easy to find somebody. And when you use an interpreter, say you're looking after an Italian young man, and he doesn't understand you, and you go and grab one of his peers that speak Italian, they might take a mickey out of you and interpret something incorrectly. Especially Afrikaans are naughty for that too. So if you there's lots of South Africans in Mackay. If you go and grab one of them, if you ask them to teach you Afrikaans, they're going to teach you all the swear words. To start off with. Are they going to tell you? They're going to tell you a swear word and next time you see another South African, say to them, this is hello, and it's not really hello. And you get a smack behind your head when your guys are going, you're gonna flatten you. What did you say? And you're like, oh, this is what my friend said I should say. So watch out for those interpreters. They're very naughty for that. They are. So there is some services available. But Google Translator is a good one. It's more trusting. Resources for interpreters may include laptops, computers and all that, the internet, as we said. Cultural brokers are they also not that's readily available is what these units want to say. So I'm going to skip over that. We just have to make a way, I think. I had an old Islander lady I looked after. I forget her surname. Her name was Suzanne, but we all called her Mum. And her family made us a list of words that they, in Creole, and then with the phonics on how to pronounce it. But even in that, we made some really funny mistakes with her. I'd go and take her to the toilet, and I sit on the toilet and I say, kai, 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 and she goes, oh, she's like, it's so funny because I'm telling her to eat, and she needs to she needs to do number two, and she's sitting laughing at me. What am I saying to her? But she had a good sense of humor, so she could laugh at me. And then afterwards I realized, I mixed up kai kai and kaka. So, you have to I got that mixed up. So it's sometimes really, really hard. Identifying chapter 4, promoting understanding across diverse groups, identifying issues that may cause communication misunderstanding or other difficulties. Due to people's diverse backgrounds, you may encounter communication problems or misunderstandings. Issues that may cause problems are jargon or slang, unclear organization rules and protocols, written information, and Varieties, variations in expected behaviors. So chapter 4.2, where difficulties or misunderstandings occur, consider the impact of social and cultural diversity. These impacts are people who are minorities are more vulnerable, and a range of issues may affect their communication. Consider whether they've experienced discrimination, racism, sexism, sexism, or homophobia, bullying, physical, mental health issues, unemployment, or homelessness. Sometimes, yeah, we might look after somebody that have, like, I've looked after some old girls that if you try to shower them or attend to them, that they start screaming, and then you obviously, then later on you might learn that they've suffered some sort of abuse somewhere along the line, and or you might have clients that don't want me to look after them, come in because they've had some trauma in their lives, and there are a lot of those people there, so we have to sometimes look behind the reason. And when we do behaviors of concern, which is the one you're missing. No, DIS, you've done DIS 001, you're missing, hey, yeah. So in behaviors of concern or managing behaviors of concern, we focus a lot on the reason behind people having behaviors of concern. And sometimes these are issues, these are things, that's why they react like that. Especially people with dementia.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah, because they actually reacting, or they are having these behaviors because there's something behind it, or they're communicating a need, which is the big thing as well, So yeah, even in bullying and just our colleagues, you might work with a colleague that have suffered bullying before or in other areas, and then they, react when you say something to them because they think you are, being unfair towards them, or you're trying to, or withdraw, and you're wondering why they're being so quiet or why they're acting like that. So just considering that, just give it a thought. So influence on our Australian society may be that people's responses in diversity are towards religions. How does media fit in? Oh, the way, media actually influences us because of, yeah, getting constant, Hitler said, if you tell the lie long enough and often enough, people will start believe it. Yeah, so that's in recent news also. People's individual upbringing, communities, and changing attitudes. It's a bit like your view on the third world countries, and you see these poor little babies on the TV and all, they're starving to death, or you see, they have a tiger in every, you think, oh, some people think just because I'm from Namibia, we had lions in our backyard, or, or we had game reserves all around us, which, it's like just the view that you get from TV ads or from media. So the following are protective factors that can reduce the risk of threats focused by marginalized groups. Education, just teaching people about things. I have a little teaching. It's a short half-hour teaching that I think I've recorded. No, I might not have. On Africa and all the countries in Africa, because I've discovered that most Australians don't know that we have 52 countries, and they all think that it's one big country like Australia, So in education and getting people aware, just you can use that as opportunity. Through employment, through family and community, understanding the language, ability to practice the culture openly, and then through written and recorded skills or history, like when we are working with people, I love going to read their history. Who were they? Or who are they? Who are their parents? Who are their family? You know, what background are they coming from? Because that helps us to care for them properly, you know, understanding who they are. And especially when people develop dementia or Alzheimer's, it's really important we understand these little things about who they are because it influences their character. If you look after old school teachers, somebody was saying the other day they had to look after me one day because I'm a nurse and a teacher. So, you know, we are the worst to look after. But you then have an understanding of their needs, better understanding of their needs. Make an effort to be sensitive in resolving differences and taking account of diversity considerations in resolving difficulties, strategies to resolve difficulties, negotiation, culturally appropriate guidelines, sitting together, talking about things, identify mediators, you know, like with Lynn and what was his name? Makund, that was his name, the guy from Nepal. He, you know, they always used me as a mediator because I ended up having a friendship with him and forming a connection by constantly asking him about his culture and getting to know who he was. And then he never got along with Lynn, so I was always in the middle between them. And because we worked together 7 days a week, just about, you know, we had to mediate between each other. And negotiations and workplace code of practice, you know, just and getting to know cultures, addressing any difficulties appropriate to people and seeking assistance when required. We may need to seek additional resources such as interpreters, cultural interpreters, family members, communication training, diversity awareness programs. So I forget which unit it was. I have a scenario of where there was, it might be in the legally and ethically one where there was sexual misconduct with Donnie, Brian, and yeah, and Cassie. So in that scenario, there was like, oh, let's do training for all of them, you know. So sometimes it's needed. So let's do training as a group together. At some stage, I think, I forget which decade it was, perhaps in the 90s, maybe. Yeah, I think in the beginning of the 90s, that period, a lot of businesses were doing these retreats or boot camps for their employees, and they would all go away for a weekend and they would do these boot camps as team building things and building cultural awareness and getting to know each other. I've done a course once that was really amazing, was a creativity course we did with the South African Army, and I came in. I was volunteering in Boy Scouts for about a year, 2 years. I was the year 4 teacher, and I had, you know, we did this boot camp with South African Army psychologists, and he locked us all in a room, and we did these creativity exercises together, and we did some crazy stuff, and it was really good to bring our inner child out, you know, landed up hopping around like kangaroos and doing all sorts of silly things just to be creative, which is really good. It's needed in our industry, really, because you have to think on your feet. You constantly are confronted by people with behaviors or needs that you have to think about something very fast, you know. It's the one industry, I think, where lying is not a sin, because we lie like sweet cake. No, don't tell them. The bus will be here soon, don't worry. I just saw the other day a TV program, and there was and they had made a bus stop inside the old age home. As you walked in at the front door, there was a bench and there was a big sign, bus stop. There was like 6 of them sitting on the bench waiting for the bus. Waiting for a while. At least it keeps them sitting in one place, you know. Anyway, So that's the end of this unit. I hope you enjoyed it. Has anyone got any questions? No? Oh, good. Thank you very much. So we will do the questions tomorrow together, I think. We'll give Rennie off so she can go.
No, I
and...
don't care. You can do them today if you want to.
No, I suspect we'll have a bigger class tomorrow and then I'll end up having to repeat myself. Unless any one of you is a need to do it today. You'll be okay to come back tomorrow? Yeah? Okay, we might do it tomorrow because I do have a feeling we'll have a much bigger class tomorrow.
That's these
Yeah.
questions.
Yes. Yeah.
The ones that you
All right. Thank you so much, guys. We'll end